Hello, everyone. I'm not sure, I'll introduce myself a little bit and then go into talking about Dear Green Place. But I'm an India-born artist. I've been living in Scotland for about 18 years, and a lot of my work explores narratives of displacement. I'm always really interested in exploring female experiences of what it's like to be floating in between cultures, floating between metaphysical states, like in Dear Green Place, of being young and growing up. So there's always this kind of area of in-between that I'm really interested in exploring. This stems from my own background of being born in India. I moved from India to Ireland when I was 3, and then grew up in the Middle East till I was a teenager, and then I moved to Eastbourne, and then I moved up to Scotland. So notions of home, cultural identity, shifting cultural identities, I'm really interested in how to use photography to explore that experience. So Dear Green Place, that was developed as part of an artist residency I was doing at Street Level Photo Works back in 2011 to 2013. The series focuses on young people, teenagers, and explores them in urban spaces, in green parks, little pockets of green across the city of Glasgow. For me, a lot of my work since Dear Green Place has been made in Glasgow, but initially, when I started the residency, one of the things I found really interesting was the amount of parks and green spots there were in Glasgow. There's around 80, 90 parks all across the city. So I became really interested in how these parks were used, how these green spaces were used. I was also really intrigued by the name of Glasgow, Glasgow basically translating to Dear Green Place in Gaelic. So I was kind of like, okay, I want to make work looking at this idea of green, and so looking at nature. So I started hanging out at parks, just kind of seeing how the community used them. And what I found, like most cities and most public parks, is that you always see lots of young people hanging out in parks, especially teenagers, because they're kind of that awkward age where they're too old to kind of hang out at home, like where their parents know what they're doing, but they're too young to go into pubs and bars. So parks are usually kind of, these hubs where they hang out. And reflecting on my own childhood and teenage years, a lot of my memories of my first kiss or a breakup or making friends or fighting with your friends, and it all kind of happened in the backdrop of some park, specifically Gildred or Motkin Park in Eastbourne in my memory. So I kind of decided I wanted to do something looking at teenagers and them in their sort of green environments in cityscapes, but looking at these pockets of green. Historically, and I guess in a lot of my work, I use nature as a metaphor to explore the transitional states of people, because I guess in European painting and Eastern painting, nature and women are always connected. Nature's always expressed as female, and in a way, women are always symbolized and represented through natural forms, flowers blooming, fertile land, growth, regeneration, blooming, decaying. And so all those kind of themes were going on in my head when I started making the work. I was also really, really inspired by Enlightenment paintings, especially looking at Scottish Enlightenment paintings like Alan Ramsay. I'm not going to talk too much about the history of sort of childhood and representation, but basically, pre-Enlightenment era, childhood wasn't really represented in paintings or art. Young people were usually just dressed as adults, but in the Enlightenment era, there was this new thinking developing and this new idea of representing young people in nature to kind of reflect innocence, purity. And so I kind of started studying at the history of childhood and how it was represented, and I loved this kind of historical reference of young people being depicted in nature to explore youth, growing, fragility, vulnerability. So I was referencing, I decided I'd really like to compose these portraits, referencing and doing a bit of a homage to Enlightenment paintings, but I also wanted to explore this internal conflict of young people growing up and having to sort of let go of the sort of innocence and becoming knowing. So each of the portraits have little fragments and clues of cityscapes, of concrete, of buildings. So it kind of mirrors that internal conflict that the young people are having. In terms of the way the portraits were made, they were shot on 5:4. A lot of my work is shot on analog film, and I really wanted, to kind of tie it in with Enlightenment paintings, I really wanted the images to be really shallow, almost to replicate old paintings that have painted backdrops. So the sort of reasoning behind the shallowness of the images was really to kind of connect it and reference this sort of history of childhood and adolescence being represented through European art. But another reason was also to focus in on the expressions of the young people who are vulnerable, who are scared, who are confident, everything, all of above. So the images really wanted to get, I really wanted people to kind of focus in on the expressions of the young girls as they're growing up, the vulnerability, the fear, and all the things you kind of experience when you're that age. I'm just going to jump forward to where I am now. So as I was saying, women in nature are themes that for the past 8-9 years that I explore in my work. Now I'm making some new work that's going to be shown at street level in 2 weeks. The new work's also looking at femininity and flora, but this time I've turned the lens towards my own family history. So I'm looking at my family's history of migration, using plants and botanical icons to explore the migratory experiences of me, my mum, and my gran. So again, I'm working with nature, but it's a little more abstract than physically, I guess, in Dear Green Place, but still referencing this idea of origin, growth, women traversing through nature, using nature to explore the experiences of women. I think I'm going to leave it at that and give it to Chris. Thank you so much.